Hidden Horsepower Live here at the Engine Performance Expo. Joe Costello along with Lake Speed Jr. And we are joined in studio by the Horsepower King, Mr. Tony Bischoff. The rumor that you would be here has been circulating throughout for days, and now here you are. And I hear it was a bit of an effort to get here, so thank you for making it.
No problem. My pleasure.
Over hill, over dale, through some snow.
No snow, just hilly roads.
Excellent, excellent.
Well, we had to have some balance, right? We went all circle track, NASCAR-ish, dirt racings. We had to bring back some straight line power here.
That's right.
Just to balance things out, right?
You say that, though, but the last roundtable, we're hearing about Lee Shepard and Raymond Beadle and all of this stuff. So it is all an interwoven community. As much as we want to silo different styles of racing,
it's true.
In the end, an engine's an air pump. Would you agree?
Absolutely. Yep. They all, drag race just doesn't have to live quite as long, and we probably run them a little harder. Probably harder on stuff, but we don't have to worry about the durability aspects for sure. So we don't have to go 1,000 laps or anything like that. So.
Which is why you guys know how to make the power. When it comes to like finding the power, more often than not, I'm hearing the names of drag racers.
Yep. Well, it's definitely a different world. Now, naturally, you can't survive 1,000 laps with an inch lift camshaft and 1,200 pounds on the nose and stuff like that. So, I mean, that's why there's a power difference. Naturally, they probably couldn't even run the compressions that we run in a pump gas.
It'd get too hot too quick.
In race gas, sometimes we might have 18 to 1, and I don't think a late model engine is going to survive at that kind of compression. So I doubt it. I've never tried it.
There were some, before they had the compression rules in NASCAR, there were some short track engines that were really, really high compression. That's because they were on the throttle for like 7 seconds. That was about it, right?
Makes sense.
So like, you really couldn't run it any further than that because she wasn't going to make it.
And that's why they don't. I don't guess they don't have qualifier engines anymore.
Oh no, we haven't had that in almost 20 years.
I don't follow anything that runs in circles, so don't interest me. So
that's all right. We won't hold it against you. Oh, it's not.
But that's interesting though, in that there's enough going on in the what you call it, the drag race world, the straight line world, or even fast streetcar world. Like, where are you focusing your energy these days?
Well, I primarily just focus my energy where the business comes in on actually being a drag racer. That's probably the majority of our business is drag race. Interesting enough, truck pulling is probably a close second. We do a lot of truck pulling engines. It's very popular. Now we have to worry a little bit more about durability there because they'll go 22 seconds at 10,000 RPM. So that's a little bit tougher. And so it provides its own challenges. And the load's different, right? I mean, with the drag race car, you're accelerating this mass, and it's kind of going away as you're accelerating. With the truck pulling stuff, that sled thing's moving, right? Yeah, load gets higher as it goes down the track. And then they don't really have to worry about accelerating the engine up. Usually if they got a clutch, they might start out at 8,000 or 9,000 RPM. And then sometimes it'll come down a little bit and then back up. But yeah, they're always above 8,000 for the most part, depending what class and stuff they're in. So now, are most of those just NA or any of those boosted? All the ones we deal with are NA. Okay. There is some boosted classes. There's some tractor pulling stuff. They got 5 boosted. I've seen some of those things. Those are crazy. Yeah, I don't mess with any of them. They're all NA stuff. So that provides its own challenges, but. Very exciting stuff. So this is, Rottler helped support this deal. So I heard that Mr. Keebler and you had an interesting conversation not long ago related to surface finish and some things you found on one of those tractor pulling engines. Well, I don't think it was a tractor pulling engine, but we do, everything's always changing. Power level is changing, fuel type is changing. Right. And we found with alcohol, we did have to start changing our surface finishes. Interesting enough, we have to end up going to a coarser stone to begin with, get deep valleys. Right, yeah, because you can't, if you don't have enough valley to begin with, you can't get it in the plateauing process. Exactly. Well, you need to deep valleys to support the oil, and then you got to kind of, for lack of a better term, cut the peaks off. Yes, sir. And make a smooth top. So. Billy caught it mowing the grass earlier. Hey, I like that. Yeah. That's kind of how I think. So, but with again, it's always changing. Even oils are changing and everything's changing. So you kind of got to buy the surface profilometer and stuff to keep up with things that keep it together. But by adding that valley, it really helped
pick up the ring seal in that engine.
Ring seal's better. You don't scuff pistons as much. You don't scuff rings as much.
That's always nice.
Yeah, so it's multi.
Because you're holding enough oil in that valley.
Exactly. Holding enough
to
oil
lubricate and to seal.
To keep it lubricated, and then you cut the peaks off so it's got something smooth to seal up against. And
load bearing area.
Yep, exactly. And that works good.
So back to the truck and tractor pull, because that's an area of motorsport that I've only seen on TV somewhat. I know there's a lot of cross pollination between the drag racers. I think of Ken Venny; he is like a icon over there. But like 1,000 horsepower pulling engine versus 1,000 horsepower drag racing engine. What's different about them?
Yeah, the big difference is the tune-ups are a little different. We can't run as much timing in them because they build so much more chamber temperature.
Right.
The valve train we make a little bit more stable. We won't go quite as much lift, maybe not as aggressive ramp speeds on the camshaft to keep the valve train under control, because they might be 10-2 for 22 seconds. And the valve train gets out of control.
Crazy dyno pull.
Well, we don't do that on the
Okay. No. It's like, I want to come to the shop and hear that.
Because you're afraid, right? Like
the chickens. Yeah. But if they can't handle the dyno, they won't handle the tractor. But we don't really need to run them that hard to see what we want to see.
Right.
We quantify the power with a 4-second pull. It's no problem to do that, and so that's why we don't run them. Why wear it out before you put it in the tractor? I say tractor. Most of them are in trucks. I should have said that. It's truck pulling mainly, but we do a few tractor engines too. But they're still all domestic V8s, so it's all the same.
Got it.
But that's a whole subculture of motorsport that I'm sure everybody knows and has seen it. But like it's their own.
It's a different world for sure. Most of them are actually, probably a high percent of them are farmers.
Right.
And so they think a little differently, but it's still the same. They're
competitive, right?
They're very competitive. Anybody in the motorsports, they do it rarely. They're just competitive. So it's all the same, and it's interestingly enough, it's a little bit more secret world, because in the drag race world, everybody knows who I'm doing engines for. Put my name on the valve covers. Most of the truck pullers won't let me put my name on the valve covers. So
okay. So they're still in the secret stage.
Yeah, the other day we was dynoing an engine for one tractor puller, and another one come up to drop his engine off, and I was a little worried there might be a fight there. So.
That's awesome. That's great. But that's interesting though. It's like they don't want to advertise.
Yeah, they don't want nobody to know. No. Yeah.
That's the way it was back in the day.
Yeah, I wonder
of
why.
drag racing and NASCAR. That's how it was.
Stuff I would want people to know.
And it doesn't bother me. We have plenty of work, so if I didn't have much work, then I might be.
What about
a little bit harder
within drag racing? I know some stock and super stock stuff, yes, but what else? Because there are new categories like the factory stock showdown, which is boosted stuff. I don't know if you've entertained any of that. Some people are talking about how those power plants might end up in the new Factory X, which Factory X might end up being the new Pro Stock.
We do quite a few of the factory shootout engines. I can't say who we do them for.
Right.
But so we're in that a little bit. I enjoy that class a lot, but it's a different world. That's an interesting world going back, because you get factory shootout, but they run them motors way over 10,000 RPM.
Right.
So that presents its own set of challenges, because they still have to run a wet sump factory oil pan.
Okay, so talk about that, because that was one thing me and Ben.
Subject.
Sometimes
they blow up at the end of the track and they crash. So.
Yeah. So that was one of the things that we really wanted to do with this engine performance Expo built. It's an LS. We were like, of course, Ben being the high RPM guy, we were like, okay, well let's do some RPM. But then as we started talking, like, wait, this is a wet sump engine. I'm pretty sure that oil pump's going to cavitate probably around like 7,500 RPM. So that's way short of like 9,000 and 10,000 RPM. So how do you get there? I mean,
I shouldn't say we pray a lot. That's all.
That's fair. That's fair.
We do a little bit of pump work to them. You try to baffle the pan better. Again, you have to run the pan that's part number legal.
Okay.
Yeah, so it's just a simple little wet sump pan. It'll barely hold 7 quarts, so it gets kind of tricky. So
do you see at a certain RPM level that you think the pump's starting to cavitate? Can you see that pressure drop or anything?
Oh yes, absolutely. We can't hardly get it. We can't get away from it. Thank goodness for good oils. That's really what saves them. I think the quality oils nowadays.
Probably thinner oil probably helps out a lot, I would think.
No, actually, we personally run thicker oil
Really?
Because it's a thicker film strength is going to stay
Okay,
in there
so
better.
when it does cavitate, so you're saying, hey, it's going to cavitate, so there's going to be air bubbles,
Yeah.
so we might as well run a thicker oil. Okay, I like that approach.
And
As
I'm
opposed to
embarrassed
going-
to say that's as good as we've got so far. So.
Okay. I know early on with some of those guys, they started turning RPM. We started going to lower viscosity, and it helped them run a little bit higher RPM before the pump would cavitate. But I guess now you're so far beyond the limit of the pump that you're having to go back the other direction.
Well, that's how we did it. Everybody does things differently. We've seen a little bit of increase in the bearings look better once we went to the thicker oil.
Okay.
And but again, we're still working on the pumps and the pickups and baffling and stuff, and it's all getting better, but it's still not. It's
And how much? What's the oil volume?
Far from ideal.
So that with that factory pan, what's the oil volume you're having to deal with?
Well, they're designed to run 7 quarts. I think most of them we got 8 in them. So I mean,
Trying to add volume.
but we're adding volume of oil, but that kind of makes it cavitate worse sometimes too. You just
Okay.
whip it up more. So
Like with the Expo build, Robert Yates Racing had an 11 quart road race pan, so we actually went to 11 quart pan. So it's huge. We're like, okay, and even at 7,500, 8,000 RPM, we didn't see any drop off with the 1540 oil in there. And I was like, okay, maybe that larger volume, which we were hoping that would help, might be the deal that enables us to run to an even higher RPM.
absolutely, yeah. And anytime you get a bigger volume pan, even if it's just to get the oil farther from the crank, is going to help you. So
Right.
Now, you mentioned like that's still kind of a relatively new universe, though. Like we're spinning these engines super high. I'm excited that they're more and more people are getting into those engines. We're talking about boosted, they're supercharged, right? Relative small blocks, and these things are down in the 7s at 3,500 pounds. They're amazing little cars.
Yep,
It's a very
yep.
popular category, but the potential was unlocked. Like originally they were running 8.0s. Now some of the Fords were approaching 750s, which were the limit of the chassis, and so everybody had to like back off for a little bit.
Well, I shouldn't dog on NHRA, but the big difference was they allowed different superchargers in, and that made a massive power difference. Up until the last 2 or 3 years, they had to all run the same 2.9 Whipple, and that was very RPM limited superchargers. So that they was all only running 8,500 until they allowed these new ones in, and man, they freed it way up.
The efficiency of the supercharger.
The efficiency of the supercharger went way up. So they keep taking pulley away from them to slow them down, make them equal, but they're so efficient they can just spin the motor faster and it makes power still. That's why we're at 10,000 now. So
Okay. To
they
work
slowed the blower down, they just speeded
the engine up
Yeah.
to get back to where you want it to be.
Absolutely.
So how much room do you have to build, design, change within the NHRA rules for that class?
There's not a lot. You have lift limits.
Okay.
You have to run their part numbered pistons. You have a compression ratio limit. You have, you're not supposed to touch the heads. They are CNC porters, and they got volumes, port volumes, just like any stock or super
Right.
stock class. So it's pretty limited what you can do to the engines. There's a lot of talk about the parity of the superchargers and how they can police those, but we won't get into that. So
Right. Because there's a big difference between, say, a Whipple and like a Pro Charger.
yep,
I mean,
absolutely.
they're not the same
Well,
thing. They both make boost,
Right.
but one's way more efficient than the other.
Exactly, and and Chevy has a Magnuson, and then the Dodge and the Fords have a 3-liter Whipple, I think, but they're slightly different. But so it's pretty hard to make them all the same. It's
Well, it's been a great challenge, and some racers have come in, and it was going to be very exciting, and then some racers left, but hopefully this year, the end of last year, I felt like the parity was close.
It's pretty good, and again, that's the hard part, keeping parity. And just like any class, I don't know how long that class has been around, maybe 6 years or something like that. As the competition gets stiffer and you got people investing more and more time and bigger teams, and then you start seeing people stand out, and then it's harder for the guy that just thinks he's going to go race by himself and with one engine and be competitive. It's really hard.
Well,
Yeah.
that's what got first. You got a 4-valve engine going up against a 2-valve pushrod engine, a couple of different ones. So to me that's intriguing.
Right.
Like, oh my goodness, 2 different technologies. But then you advertise it as a class where people can buy the car and go race, and then pro stock racers are buying the cars. And
Pro
stock racing.
Yeah, exactly.
Like, we're going to do this just like pro stock, and we're going to. And boy, it really works when they do that.
And you can go buy the car and race, but it's going to be an 820 car, or maybe an 80 car, but it's not going to be a 760 car. So.
Right. You got to do a little extra.
You got to do a lot extra. So a whole lot extra. So
Right.
It's not just the car. It's transmission and torque converter and. It's just there's a lot going on.
Well, welcome.
Well, I heard the torque
drivers.
converter is a huge deal in
Huge
these
deal.
things.
Oh, absolutely is. So
Well, that's why a lot of the Ford guys, and I'm not speaking out of school here, they got annoyed because every time a rules change came down, that's a new torque converter. Like, what do we spend it every single time?
well, that's what happens. Yeah, you slow the supercharger down. Now its torque curve is different, and it's hard. And that's when you got 3 different combinations, and they try to make it all run the same.
They got annoyed because it was always them,
Yep.
right? Like, it was always them. It's like, hey,
Well,
speed these other guys up, make them go buy 5 different torque
You
converters.
start off with a bad dude extra valves in the engine, and then get a really good supercharger on top of it. They was just kind of asking for it. So
What is
Yeah.
I shouldn't say that.
Yeah, well,
They didn't ask for it, but that's what happens. That's just what happens. And I always say, don't ever show your hand. And well, egos got in front of them, and they just let it all hang out. And so they lost a half inch of pulleys. What happened? So. Or
Right.
gained a half inch. I guess that was.
Gained it. Yeah.
But going fast is so fun.
It is fun. That drives your ego, but you got to balance that out a little bit. I say so.
So back to say, you got to kind of keep your cards to your chest.
Don't ever show your hand. That's what I say.
One of the stories my dad told me. He drove for Bud Moore for a little while, and he said, back in the day, him and Pearson, man, they won a lot of races. He said, back in the day when we had David, we had 40 horsepower, everybody. But David was smart enough to know that I'm not going to lead every lap at every race,
Absolutely.
even though I could have. He's like, we're going to North Wilkesboro. That race only pays like $7,000 to win. I'm not going to win that one. I'll run 5th,
Yeah,
right?
get close. Give them a chance.
Right. Well, I'll let these other guys win these races. Okay, we're going to Coca-Cola 600. Well, that pays $20,000. I'm going to win that race, but I'm not going to stink it up.
Yep.
I'm going to probably run 4th, 5th, maybe 6th or 7th, mid-pack. After the last pit stop, we're going to come out. We're probably coming around 4th or 5th, and then I'm going to go to the front. I'm going to pick them off one by one, and then finally get there. In fact, the other night we were having dinner, and Mark Cronquist was here, and Keith Norton was here, and we all started talking, and Billy Godbolt was there too, and we all came to the same moment, and it had to have been like maybe 1992 at the July Daytona race, and Sterling Marlin was leading the race. And this is right when Crane had come out with the 2-1 rocker ratio, and then brand new rockers, and the 4-car, which is right up the road from here, right? They had this package, right? And of course they had all the Crane stuff on it, and they had the Dr. Gas X pipe. And of course it sounded a little bit different. But what they also had was some other stuff inside the engine that let little air get past the restrictor plate. So Sterling's leading the race. It's like maybe like 10 laps from the end. And all of a sudden, he comes on the radio, I think rocker broke. We're missing. It's missing. It's got to be that rocker. It broke. And you're like, no. It's not the rocker. It's not the rocker. Just switch ignition boxes. Right? So by the time they had this conversation and he switches the ignition box, he's lost the draft. I mean, he's a full straightaway behind everybody else. When those last 7 laps, he runs down the entire pack, drives around the outside of them, and then drops out in front. And I'm like, dude, you didn't make that look hard enough.
Yeah, that got them checked close.
Oh yeah, they did. Oh yeah, I think they said that's like Mark was like, oh yeah, they took the heads and had them X-rayed after that. So you stunk it up too much,
So you've had success. You've won Engine Masters. You've done a lot of different competitions in the engine building world. Like, what gets you really excited, to compete? Like, we talk about competition, right? Well, that's true in the engine builder world as well. You're not just sending these guys out like these are your babies. So what gets you excited? What's got you excited? And what are you looking to do in the future? You're still a young guy.
I don't know. I must be getting old. I don't know. I do love competition. So if, naturally if my customers win, I feel like I win too. So that's not really changed. I enjoy building engines, and I enjoy my engines winning. So it's just pretty simple. I just enjoy competition. So as far as what gets me excited, I guess really just being able to build engines every day, and we're always looking for better cylinder head, better port design, better cam chain, whatever. Just something in the engine. We're always just looking at little things. Unfortunately, we're so busy right now. I feel like that's kind of stifling me a little bit. It's kind of making it hard to get motivated. So I need to change my business model up so I got more time to be creative rather than
That's
Just because you have so many engines to build
right
now.
I'm just a problem solver, and so I'm trying to work through that and get that a little bit better, so I'm a little happier. But it's still just a competition that gets me excited and trying new stuff all the time. You know, I got some great guys working for me. You know, I got a specific guys working the head department. Mm-hmm. You know, I got Preston Mosier and I got Darren Morgan started working for me. And these guys,
that's right. Darren did come work for you.
And these guys are just they love this stuff. So it's it's exciting to work with them and come up with some new theories and designs on cylinder head programs and everything else involved with an engine. You know, there's a lot of way more power in a piston than everybody could think, or even rods or any part in the engine. If you just look at it, you can always find something to make it a little better. So.
And that's been a common thread that we have heard on Hidden Horsepower, but even here this weekend, and most people out there watching, they probably have taken note of it, that engine builders desire to be creative, to innovate, to dream up stuff, to come up with stuff.
You want to go from this to that.
Yeah.
That's engine building.
Like everybody.
This is good. That's better.
Yep.
And hate when the rules stifle them. Hate when rules makers stifle the ability to be creative.
Well, in my world, because I don't do a lot of NHRA stuff, we don't get. Sometimes rules gives you more creativity, so you got to go around them. Well, we can't do this. Well, what didn't they write about? Well, they didn't write about that. Let's look at this.
Right.
So I don't really think rules stifle creativity so much. It just it makes you try harder, maybe. So I don't really look at it that way. So
another perspective.
Exactly.
There's always something different you can do.
So. That part is true, right? You can find another way.
Something different. I used to think baseball was simple and stupid, and just swinging a bat. That's a pretty complicated thing. So it's an engine's the same way. There's just thousands of ways to do everything. So
to hit a sphere with a stick at 100 miles an hour is pretty challenging.
How do you get that thing to go, out of the park? I bet they spend a lot of time looking at tapes too.
So when you think about engines that you've worked on, like what combination, is there a perfect combination? Is there a close to perfect combination? Is there something out there that has been designed that you think like that is really great? Larry Morgan was telling us about the Danny Jessel Equal 8 dreamed up totally perfect.
Yeah, he came by at PRI and was telling us about it. He's like, man, this thing is awesome.
It revs perfectly. What about from your perspective? What's some of the best stuff that is?
See, I don't know. I look at everything. Well, this is what I got to start with, and that's what I work with. I've never really thought about what's the perfect engine. I just look at what I got to start with. So I don't.
Yeah, you look at the problem you got to solve.
Yeah. Well, this is a block I got to run. So how am I going to make it work? So I probably should think out of the box a little bit more. And like you said, what is the perfect engine? But I've honestly never thought about that. So
when you were doing the Engine Master stuff, though, did you chose the Dodge, right?
Well, we won with a Chevy, Ford, and a Dodge.
Okay, y'all got all three of them.
How big a deal is that, by the way? Like, so
now was that just like, hey,
they all got pistons in them? So
but the reality is, was there a reason you chose a Dodge when you chose it versus the Ford or the Chevy, or was it like, hey, you know what? I'm just going to run that one and see what I can do with it.
They're all close to the same engine. I can say, per the rules, the Dodge. The first engine we built, I think, was a Ford, and I really liked the small block Ford, and I thought it was just a good combination. And the second one, we did a small block Chevy, and I don't know why we did that one, but it won.
I have no idea why we did that, but we won.
I really don't know why. The Dodge. Now we do a lot of Gen 3 Hemis for HHP, and they said we do a lot of those engines. They're all street motors, but I looked at the rules, and they're changed every year. And per the rules, the first time we did, I thought, that Dodge, that'd be a good piece. That's a bad dude, and it was. Every time we entered that Gen 3 Hemi, we won pretty big.
Yeah,
I mean, it wasn't.
I remember everybody was like that. That was it's like stomp you.
Yeah. So, and per the rules, it was just the best combination. Even something as simple as dual spark plugs, that was worth scoring that. We dynoed a single plug and dual plug, and that was worth a lot of power. And I talked to Dodge engineers why they don't run direct injection. They might do it now, but this might have been a year or two ago. And I don't
think they do still. I think they still haven't got onto that yet.
And they said the dual plug fixed whatever emission problems they have. I'm not an emission guy, so I don't know what does what. But they said they didn't need to do it yet. So that the dual plug allowed us to run less timing and make more power. It was just a win-win. So.
Yeah, it doesn't really matter how you get there as long as you got there, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Make more power in the end is most important.
Yep.
Well, I think it's great that when we say this a lot, that right now we're living in this era where like all three OEs are trying to make great stuff from the factory that then gives you guys this canvas to do your thing.
Well, yeah, definitely anything late models. Just look at the cylinder head designs on LT4s and the Hemis and multiple valve forward heads and stuff like that. It's so much better than what we had years ago. So naturally makes it easy to make big power with late model stuff. But unfortunately, that might be all going away here shortly. So we'll see how that works. So
what do you think about the LT, the direct injection stuff?
I mean, it's a killer motor. We don't do a ton of them because we're mainly in the drag race. We do, and if we're doing one of them, it's for a street car. But they still make great power. I'm not a expert by any means on the direct injection, so I don't have a whole lot of input on that. So
fair enough. About the Hemi though, I know some people are like, man, the Hemi chamber, that's the way. I mean, that's what a combustion chamber should be. And Hemi, they're like, no, that's a wedge, right? So you build both, right? What side of the fence, if you had to choose, Hemi or a wedge?
Well, like the Hemi chamber in the Gen 3s, I mean, it's the same as a wedge, just turns. So the dual plugs is what makes the Hemi chamber better. The Gen 3 Hemi chamber, the old Gen 2 Hemi chamber, that was a horrible chamber. I mean, I think it's 160 cc's or something like that. But
way too big.
It's still, I mean, it ran, and it seems to work very well with boosted stuff. But
put some nitro in the tank.
Yeah. Right. Yep. There you go. I love nitro. I know it likes nitro. But
was that? But maybe because nitro is so slow burning, and because that's got that all that surface area. I mean, is there maybe something to the combustion science of one fuel may like one combustion chamber design better than another? I guess we need Freddie Turzer here for that. But I'm asking you because you're here now.
I don't know. I don't know what the chambers look like on the top fuel cars they run now. I have no idea. That's an engine I've never really messed with. I've seen pictures of them, so I can't answer that one.
Big.
I don't think it's not. It's
sphere.
Is it still a big ball?
The ones that I've seen, pretty much.
So I haven't seen them. So I really
just stuff as much in there as they can possibly fit.
Yeah.
So and I'm guessing maybe the valves almost pointing at each other maybe helps a little bit. We was just talking about outside how much pressures on the push rods and the lifters on the exhaust side of them, which I know nothing about because again I don't build anything fuel. So
right
when we do some supercharged alcohol engines, but that's just
gas and methanol.
Yeah,
gas and methanol. All right, final thought. In that, what I love is that you don't seem to have any preconceived notions or manufacturers, and a challenge is presented to you, and you accept the challenge and you make the best of it, and that has proven to be excellent more often than not, except for those poor farmers that don't want to put your name on their valve covers. But like, what do you think about where this industry is and where it's going over? You mentioned it might be, aspects might be going away, but I've heard there are people that still play with horses, right?
Yep, exactly.
And
Absolutely. Yep.
the people who are playing with horses are having a great time.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on where we're at?
Again, I wish I was more optimistic. I really don't know. I think I'd spend more time thinking about it, but I don't think that this sport's going to go away anytime soon, but I really have no idea where it's going, really.
People like to go fast, and we were talking about earlier, it's the smell, it's the sound, it's the
It's a
feel.
sensation. I mean, you go electric car, you can't even hear it. They got to make it make sound. How fun is that? So,
Right, no, yeah. The torque's pretty cool. I like that, but yeah,
But
it's weird not having any sound.
and they got to carry this big, heavy battery with them, and so that part of this world kind of scares me a little bit, but I think people is always going to love a combustion engine. So hopefully we're still drag racing 50 years from now and are racing in circles. I really don't know what it holds. Really, it really comes down to the young people, how much they like it. Really,
right?
You know?
Well, like you said, there's still horse racing.
That's
There's horse racing before there's car racing, and there's still horse racing.
And I got to do an interview with some guys that were really on the cutting edge of a lot of the electric stuff. This is about 4 or 5 years ago, and they said that they were working on it, and they liked it, and it was science and everything. And they said that do not fear. Don't fear it, because the electrical applications, there's going to be people like that. But look at the import cars, right? There are guys that love those Honda engines, and they make them go fast, like front wheel drive Honda Civics. They're going in the 6s. They're boosted. They're amazing. That's not for me. But I like what I like.
Right.
They like what they like. The electric guys are going to like what they like. But they brought up the horses. They were like, horses are popular for people who want to mess around with them, who can afford to mess around with them, and have that deal. There was a time in American history where everybody had a horse. You had to have a horse. That was part of life, is having a horse, right? It's not anymore. But horses and that whole hobby and culture, it's the people who are specializing in it are making more money than they ever did before.
Right.
Like you look at the Bob Bafferts of the world, like you know how to do that, you can be a wealthy person.
Right.
And that was the map that was pointed out for me. Who knows if that will be how it turns out. But for a guy like you, are you the Bob Baffert of automotive? Like maybe you are.
I think he would be.
That's what I'm saying.
Well, he has the wins and thing to prove it. So
absolutely.
it's okay.
Minus the most recent thing, which was a little negative.
And it could be too, just like anything, the competition from the electric might make our sport get bigger and better. You could,
right?
So
we're gonna find out. We're gonna live it.
It might be
exactly.
There might be big races, electric versus gas. Who knows?
Who knows? Tony, thank you very much. Appreciate you.
Right, appreciate me.
Great job. Thanks for coming out, making the effort. Hidden Horsepower. You can listen on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, SoundCloud. It's great to listen to while you're driving, doing something else. We're all over social media as well. There's a Facebook group, the Total Seal page. Great way to listen. And we are generating so much content for that show, Lake.
Oh, yes, we are.
We got all the PRI stuff. We got this stuff. It is going to be great. And all of you listening in the future on Hidden Horsepower, thank you for listening. So you know who has been a big part of the Engine Performance Expo this time around?
Ben Strader has been a huge contributor. Again, without Jimmy Barton and Ben Strader, this is not happening. So now we're going to go to a video back out at Ben's place, EFI University, and let him tell you a little bit about his backstory and what EFI University is all about.
What a day, what a day, what a day. Yeah, my brain is swollen. I've learned so much today. They told us, don't start cars. We are not going to listen.